morning. How is everyone? Well, I changed my mind about what to talk to you about. I changed my mind because there were some questions coming in. And I thought I would talk with you about something that the other people in the congregation are confused about. You notice we're having communion today, okay? And you notice it's not the first Sunday of the month, right? Okay. Well, there are a couple reasons for that. One is next week we'll be doing a special service called the Hanging of the Greens, where we're going to finish decorating the church during the service. And I'd like for all of you to help me, as well as some other adults that will be here. You'll help finish decorating the church, and I'll talk about what all of those decorations mean while we're doing that. The other reason for having communion today has to do with a very old tradition that we don't need to still do, but that we still do it anyway. How did you all get to church today? In a car, okay? Have you ever walked to church? Have you ever known anybody who did walk to church? Okay. I used to walk to church on occasion when I lived in a very small town where I was the pastor of the church, and we lived within walking distance. And so Mrs. Sasser and I both would walk to church in that case. Have you ever known anybody who's gone to church on horseback? Okay. Well, our part of the Christian church is known as the Methodist church, or the Methodist tradition. And the Methodist church started 125 years ago. And when it did, and it spread throughout the United States, churches were very small. And they had to share a pastor because they couldn't all afford a pastor of their own. So a pastor would go from one church to another, and the pastor would preach and lead service and baptize people and serve communion and maybe even do a wedding, all on one Sunday. And the pastors traveled around back then on horseback. And because of that, churches became accustomed to having communion only at certain times of the year, because that's when the pastor was in town. And when the pastor wasn't there, they would gather and they'd pray for each other and they'd sing hymns, or they may have a pastor from another church who would come and lead services there. But that's why we typically only have communion one Sunday a month. It's a tradition that goes back 225 years to when people had to get to church on horseback. And so even though we don't have to do that now, and we could potentially have communion every week, we haven't yet gotten back to doing that. Okay. Now will you pray with me? Dear God, we thank you for these children and the families that brought them to church, and for the privilege of coming to your table on this Christ the King Sunday. Amen.